In understanding and shifting an energy pattern, it can be useful to explore and understand what it is. So, depression. The root word is press, and so pressure, to compress, to press, is to energize something. So if you put pressure on a tennis ball, it energizes the tennis ball, it creates a reaction. If you put pressure on a goal, if you put pressure on an intention, it energizes that intention. So pressure is a form of energy. There's psychological pressure, physical pressure, mental pressure, emotional pressure, electrical pressure. When you press something, it is to infuse it with energy. When you depress something, it is to remove energy or take energy away. So you have, to pressurize the airplane cabin is to put air in the cabin and pressurize it. To depressurize the cabin is to let that pressure out. So that's the general core function that we're looking at, is to energize something or de-energize it. And pressure, in this case, is a metaphor for general energization of a body, of a mind, of a heart, of an ecology. So to be in a depressed state is to be in a de-energized state. And without energy, you don't have growth, you don't have momentum. You have stagnation, or in cases of deep depression, you have a vacuum. Because, the opposite of pressurizing an airline cabin would be to create a vacuum in the airline, in the airplane cabin. And, extreme vacuums begin to suck things in to fill the void. So that's the continuum that we're dealing with. Now, it's useful looking at this as a mechanical, or from a mechanical angle, because as you can tell from these examples, you can have too much energy in a system or too little. You can have too much energy in the wrong system as well, right? You can put gas into a car that's heading towards a wall, and you can remove gas in a context where the car needs to pass safely, right? And so you can see that within a mechanical framework, there are a variety of contexts in which having more energy and more acceleration, because that's one of the corollaries with pressurizing something, is you accelerate it in many cases, right? If you add energy to the pattern of walking, for example, you start jogging and then you start running. And so there is a function. There is a time and place when you want more energy, and there's a time and place when you want less energy. So a dysfunctional system, a dysfunctional dynamic from our perspective, and it is important to understand that our perspective is informed by the culture that we're in. The memes, the way that we look at the world, is through a given culture. And so within that cultural framework, there are certain things that have high rank and certain things that have low rank. And the high rank things, which in American culture would start off by making lots of money. It's what we measure. I mean, we may say that we believe in the environment or the ecology or being great parents, but we don't actually measure the best parents in the United States. We don't measure the most ecological people in the United States. We don't measure the kindest people. We measure the richest people, which is linked to the cult identity that we are capitalists. Meaning we don't have a word in America for being humanists. We don't say we're a humanist country. We say we're a capitalist country. We say we were a democratic country, and we tend to vote for the people that make us the most money. By and large, that's who gets the vote. So we're a capitalist culture in pursuit of capital, in pursuit of money. We're a democratic, but we're not a kindest culture or a humanist culture or a parental culture, right, where we measure and look at who's going to be the best parents and who's going to produce an education curriculum that leads to, high parental competency. It's just not talked about in a capitalist cult, in a capitalist culture. So, that being the case, we measure money. So we tend to pressurize and view as good that which makes us more money. Now, we're also an efficient culture because time is money, and so we try to make more money in less time. And so viewed through those lenses, for example, bunching chores together would seem like a very important thing to do. I'm driving down this street, and on this street I can do 3 chores at once. And so we might see this as very efficient, right? And frankly, if we followed this to the extreme, we would think that it would be more efficient to stay up 24 hours a day. And so my point is that we have an idea of what we ought to be doing within the framework of our cult, which is rarely questioned. Nobody says, maybe I should do things less efficiently, because then I would have more time to enjoy them. There was an interesting story about a nonprofit that was going to help all these women by putting a well in the center of town. And the women were carrying water, 20 minutes this way, 20 minutes this way, out of town. And so they were going to help these women by putting, the well in the center of town so they wouldn't have to walk. In other words, so they could be more efficient. And the women weren't using the well at the center of the city. They were continuing their routine of walking because it hadn't occurred to efficient-minded people to actually ask the women why they were walking to the water source. And it turns out that all the good gossip, all the laughter, all the jokes about the men, all of life that made life meaningful occurred in the 40-minute walk to and from the water source. But this was unimaginable to a capitalist cult member, right? Because time is money. So surely you would give up all the spice of life just to be 40 minutes more efficient, right? But no, these women were more intelligent in their own framework, meaning they continued to get the best gossip and tell the best jokes and get good exercise and enjoy nature, walking to and from the water source, right? And many of us will not allow ourselves that luxury, meaning if there is a more efficient way of doing something that we don't enjoy, we will do it because that's what we're supposed to do. And I say this all as build-up to the fact that depression, the phenomena of not feeling any energy to do something, to think something, to follow the path outlined by the cult, is not always because the cult is perfect and the path that we've set out for ourselves is perfect and it's a big disaster that we're not motivated to do it. Sometimes we've been brainwashed by our cult into thinking that we should be spending our energy pressurizing the system to do this, 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 and this, but we don't actually feel nourished by doing this, 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 and this. And so the depression is kind of a self-preservation, meaning when we don't have the intelligence to challenge the cult norms that we adhere to, we may just go on strike. Our body may go on strike and say, this is not feeding me. If I put more energy into this pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, I'm going to come out depleted. So I'm not doing it. And the mind, trained by the cult, said, this is a disaster, right? We're not fulfilling the meme that we've been given. We're not serving the system. The body is saying, I don't care. I'm not interested in this system. Or the biology, which is another term for the body, which includes emotions. I just don't feel like it. I don't want to do it. You got to do it. That's the thing that we do in this cult. Yeah, but go tell that to someone else. That doesn't motivate me. So I'm just going on strike and see if anyone listens, right? Does anyone give a damn at all that I'm exhausted and unnourished going through this thing over and over and over again? So depression, to withhold energy from a system, has a functional role at times. Now, we can also get confused, right? We can withhold energy from the things that nourish us and spend energy on the things that deplete us until we are depleted. And then you have the bankruptcy in that domain. In other words, in a business, if you take care of the customer that whines the most and pays the least, and you ignore the customer that pays the most and whines the least, you go bankrupt eventually. But if that's your cult protocol, if you learned in your family system, better take care of the whiner or you get punished, or whatever the system was, well, then you've learned that pattern. It helped you through childhood, and now it's killing you as an adult. You're ruining your business. But you don't get that. You just hang on to the fact it always worked before until you're bankrupt, right? And so having no energy, depression is a certain form of bankruptcy. It's saying that the things that we were thinking, feeling, doing, and the ways that we were being did not provide sustainable energy to pressurize the system, to keep the system pressurized. It's too much. So, it's also worth noting that one of the best ways to destroy energy in a system is in conflict, right? So imagine you have 30 strong men and women, and they're all pulling on this rope, and they're able to, 30 strong men and women, they're able to pull this, heavy truck out of the ditch, right? You got all this torque provided because they're all pulling in the same direction. But if suddenly you divide the 30 people into 15 people pulling the truck in the ditch and 15 people pulling it out, nothing happens. The truck stays in the ditch. Now, you spend just as much energy, but at the end of the day, you get nothing because 15 people think it's a great thing that the truck is in the ditch. Or 15 people are trying to pull the truck out in reverse, the other way, and 15 people are trying to pull the truck out forward, right? And so you have conflict, right? One group thinks that we really need to take money out of government because it's corrupt. And the other group thinks we really need to fund more. We need to fund the government more so that we can pay for the studies that would transcend its corruption, right? And so you got two approaches to the same thing. You want a better country, but you're going about it in different ways. And so the same is true as an individual. One part says we need more rest. The other part says we need more overtime so that we can retire early and get more rest. And the other one says we don't need more overtime. We need more sleep now, right? And so you got two different directions, right? A study was taken of Americans, and a majority of Americans, if given the choice to have an extra hour of sleep or an extra hour of overtime, a majority of Americans would pick the overtime. But the science says that a majority of Americans would be happier if they had picked an extra hour of sleep. So when you have a majority of people, the majority of the time, picking the thing that makes them less happy over the thing that makes them more happy because they've been misinformed, right? Because we don't say that we're a sleepist country. We say we're a capitalist country. Now, when you define yourself by something, there tends to be a self-validating habit of getting more of what you define yourself of. In other words, we all want to be more of us, right? So if we are capitalists, then we want more capital so that we can be more me, right? So that our identity gets stronger. So we don't have an identity that we're a sleepist. We're not defining our culture as a well-rested culture. So if I have to lose some of my capital to gain peace and health, then I'm losing some of my identity, the identity that's been given to me by the cult. And so, well, it just seems to make sense to give up sleep in order to make more overtime, because that's me, that we're a productive, capitalist, efficient, hard-working, hard-playing, pedal to the metal. These are who we are, right? So we get to be more of us, having defined ourselves in this way, if we do that, right? But what if that exhausts us? Well, see, that's when our body may say, fuck you and your goddamn cult membership and all this bullshit. Go fuck yourself. I'm not putting up more energy for your bullshit, right? You would think that's your identity, fine. I'm going to be depressed and go on strike, right? Until you actually start learning what makes people happy, and starting with some proper sleep, right? So in other words, what I'm getting at is that sometimes depression is a self-preservation, crude attempt to try and protest an ineffective model of reality that we don't understand is ineffective. One of the interesting surveys about competence illustrates, is it Dunning? I think it's Dunning, David Dunning, if I'm not mistaken, points out that in order to know if you are really good at something or if you're really bad at something, you have to be really good at it, because you have to know what really good looks like. And if you knew what really good looks like, you would be really good. So you have to be really good in order to know if you're bad. And so if you're really bad, you don't know that you're really bad, because you're so bad you don't even know what the standard is. You don't understand the competency in the terrain. And so you may be in a really bad setup, pursuing a really bad plan that you're too dumb to know is a really bad plan, but your body is going bankrupt. Your mind is going bankrupt. And you're saying, come on, give me a little bit more. It's going to work out this time. And your body's saying, fuck you, you dumb schmuck. You've been driving yourself into the grave the last 10 years. What do you know? You've been ruining all the resources we have. So, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not giving you another penny. It's like any intelligent person who's loaned money chronically for 10 years to someone who's never paid them back, who always has the same spiel. Next week, I'm going to pay you back, right? And you've been doing that to your body. So, this creates a crisis, because many of us haven't grown up. Meaning a child unquestioningly adopts the patterns of their parents, who unquestionably adopt the patterns of their cult. And so if you haven't grown up and you're just, this is the only way to do it because it's the only way to do it, and I know it's the only way to do it because that's the way we do it, and that's the way we've always done it, and so that's why we do it, and so we're going to keep doing it because that's what we do, right? Pretty, you can do that with anything. You can use that logic to affirm the most insane thing imaginable, and there's no holes in the argument. You're doing it because you do it, and you do it because you did it. And so that's why you're going to do it again, right? And that's the mode of an unquestioning child. Mom says, my dad says Republicans are good, so I'm a Republican. My mom says Democrats. It's a complete lack of analysis. The trouble is, when your cult is driving you into the ground with a complete lack of analysis, when no one's telling you the truth, right? And you are sure it's the way to do things because that's the way it creates a crisis because we don't know how to become adults. We may move into the next stage, which is adolescent rejection, right? Where we're rejecting this and we're rejecting that. We want nothing to do with money. We don't want to work for the man. Everything's fucked up and we have no part of it, right? We're just going to sit and smoke weed 24/7 and refuse to contribute anything, right? I'm too good for the world type of attitude. Well, that's not necessarily any better, right? Because that doesn't work either, right? So that's going to get depressing. Waiting for the world to figure out our brilliance isn't going to necessarily work either. So the adolescent stage isn't. Then how do we go into being an adult, right? Who's teaching us what an adult is? I'm not talking about growing up. I'm talking about being able to think, being able to create a brand new pattern of being where we go through adolescence questioning everything and then we come up with something better that works for us. Who's teaching us that? No one, right? So, as we move from the childlike state, it was but my government promised me if I voted for them, they would solve all my problems, right? And then they lied to me. But this one, surely, right? Surely this one will solve all my problems. And, this man, he said he would take care of me, and he didn't. This woman said she would love me for the rest of my life, and she didn't. What am I going to do? I have to find someone else who's making grandiose promises. Because I haven't grown up, right? And it's upsetting to understand that maybe my parents had it wrong. Maybe my government doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. And maybe they're so incompetent, maybe, they don't even know that they don't know what they're doing. Or maybe some of them do, and they know that we don't know what we're doing. And so if they tell us the truth, we won't vote for them. I'm not voting for you. You didn't promise me a free life and to take care of me. Go to hell. I'm looking for a parent, right? So, so a shrewd politician, well, I'm going to take care of you. Just vote for me. Give your money to me and I'll take care of you. You send me 1 Bitcoin and I'll send you 2 Bitcoin later, right? Well, why don't you just cut out the middleman and send me the 1 Bitcoin now, right? No, so because I'm not going to fulfill the promise, right? I've got to get a child. I'm going to promise to take care of you, but you've got to do this first, right? And then I'll take care of everything, right? And so, this is upsetting to a child. It's like, it's not working. I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. I gave the Bitcoin. I did this. I did that. I voted for this. I voted for this. And then I voted. Nobody's taking care of me, right? And so there's a crisis, right? The system isn't working. But I don't know what to do. I don't want to be a bad person and rebel. I don't want to think for myself. I just want to be a good little boy, good little girl, and wait for someone to take care of me. So, this is a problem. So, depression takes energy out of a system, and sometimes that's a good thing. There is too little pressure, right? When you're not even thinking. I mean, it's one thing to take pressure out of the system, think about it, and then put the pressure or the energy into another system. Like, that's good investing, right? You say, you know what? I thought these company managers were doing a good job. They're not. They're not doing a good job. And so I'm going to take my money out of this stock, and I've analyzed it, and I think they're going to do a better job. Now, let's be honest, most of us are wrong. The majority of people underperform the market, which means the majority of people are wrong the majority of the time. So we're thinking things through. We're just highly likely to be wrong. But, that's better than nothing. And so anyway, we're intelligently reallocating energy. But if we don't know how to think, if we're not willing to be responsible, if we're just waiting for someone to promise us that this time it'll work. If I do this, you promise me I'll make lots of money? Okay, I believe in you. You have a nice smile, right? So, there's a crisis of maturity. The old identity isn't working. It's driving us into the ground. But I don't know how to grow up. I've been discouraged from growing up. My parents didn't want me to think, heaven help the family if we actually start thinking about some of the crazy things we're doing in this family. So, this is important to be aware of. Some systems should be depressurized. They should be de-energized. Some companies should go out of business, and that capital should go over to far more intelligent companies that are providing more value per dollar more intelligently, right? So that's good, right? Some species, 99% of all species on the planet are extinct. 99%. In other words, life, in its infinite wisdom, created billions upon billions of species, in billions upon billions of mutations, iterations, experiments. And 99% of them are not around right now because they weren't the best ones, right? For life to continue growing, the systems that are around right now. But this also holds true for today, meaning in another billion years, 99% of everything that's here right now will be extinct. And there will be 1% and a lot of new things that don't exist right now. So statistically speaking, we have a 99% chance of being wrong and of going extinct, right? We may be in the 1% that's still around in a billion years, but statistically, we have a 99% chance of doing it wrong. Well, this is frightening, right? How do I know which is the right one, right? So this creates depression, right? And going back, to one of the best ways to create depression is to divide the self in a deadlock that doesn't get resolved. I want to go jogging, but I don't feel like going jogging. But jogging is good for your health. Yeah, but it hurts my belly and stuff, and I don't want to get out, so I want to go jogging, but I'm not going to go jogging. I want to save up this money and invest for my future, but I don't want to give up my cappuccino. I don't want to work this. I want to be more rested, but I don't want to take the time to sleep. I want to binge watch, Netflix. And so there's all these conversations that, things could move towards a better system, but there's inner conflict. And so I spend all the time arguing. Nothing gets resolved. I'm depleted by my system, and I'm just, not going anywhere with it. So, that's, and it can get worse and worse until, our survival is threatened, right? We can't continue in this way for too much longer. So, anyway, those are some general thoughts on, the fact that any system needs its energy to be regulated, right? So you take the lungs, for example. If you depress the lungs and you stay depressed for too long, you die, right? That's depressuring a system. If you pressurize the lungs and hold them in for too long, you die. You've got to regulate energy in a system. I'm passionately in love. No, not so much. Now I'm passionately in love. Now I hate them. Now you have to go in and out. You have to move in order. Life is about moving, and it all begins with the breath, right? if I'm holding my breath, a very common habit with depression, because I don't want to feel the things that happen, that go through, then, I can't pressurize the system with fresh oxygen. I can't give my brain oxygen in order to think, because my brain has such painful thoughts. Every time I have this thought, it's so painful. I don't want to give any oxygen to my brain. And so there's a crisis, basically, that the system we're in is painful. So we don't want to push forward, but we don't have the skill, the competence to confidently move to a new system and then press energy into that and move through the depression. We're just kind of in a certain stagnant state. So since we're doing this on kind of exploring the word depression, let's look at the Merriam-Webster diction. So depression, noun, definition, an act of depressing or a state of being depressed, such as a state of feeling sad, low spirits, melancholy, specifically a mood disorder that is marked by varying degrees of sadness, despair, and loneliness. Now, keep in mind that we don't say a cultural disorder, right? Because as an individual cult, the cult of the individual, it never occurs to us that our depression might have something to do with, for example, our upbringing or the state of our, church hypocrisy, or the fact that we're working longer hours for less money in a cult that says our value is pegged to how much money we have. I mean, pretty depressing, isn't it? First, your cult tells you that your value is as high as the amount that you make. And just to kind of poke a little bit at that, no, we're not our money, But look at the way homeless people are treated in this cult, right? On a given day, I watch it, on a given day, thousands of people will walk by a homeless person who's in chronic pain, who's losing 6 hours of human life a day. And their kids may say, hey, what about we just went to church? How about helping this homeless person? No, we don't talk to those people. Or come on, we have an appointment to go to. We have an Easter egg hunt or something like that. We have to rush off and do that. And the question is, why are we treating a homeless person poorly? And we could say, well, because they don't have a house. And why don't they have a house? Well, because they don't have enough money. Where I live, it costs at least $650,000 to buy a house. You can't even build a house. The cheapest house imaginable by law costs more than $650,000. So what we're really saying is these people are worthless and their life can go down because they don't have any money. And why do businesses throw them out of their businesses? They get lost and call the police. Well, because they don't have money to spend. Now, if that same homeless person, the exact same one, suddenly had $1 million and was handing out hundreds, well, then suddenly we want them. But do we want them or do we want their money? Are they valuable? Because they're the same person. It's just they didn't have money, now they have money, right? So what we're really saying is people have no value, and we can treat them like shit as long as they're poor. But money has value, and so people with money must be treated well so they will spend their money on us, right? So it's not a very pretty construct as a culture. We are a capitalist cult. So we measure our value based on capital, which means that the people who have the least money and are in the most trauma get treated the worst, not the best. And then we lavish praise on the people that are already being treated the best, which are the richest people, and we lavish attention and praise and give them more money because they're rich. I mean, it's completely nuts at one level, right? Within the cult, it makes complete and utter sense because the goal, obviously you have to treat the billionaire well so that they'll spend some of your billions on you, right? I mean, it makes sense, right? But from a humanitarian point of view, a billionaire gets a lower interest rate on their mortgage than a homeless person. A billionaire gets 6 months no interest credit card, whatever. A homeless person, 23%. I mean, this is absolute absurdity if you're trying to create well-being within your entire population. Right? But we have to understand, they are higher risk. And so we have to charge them higher interest rates so that they can't pay it, so that they become even higher risk, right? So it's all nuts, and it all makes sense within the cultural paradigm. And so, if you suddenly find, though, that, thanks to inflation, your government decides to print a bunch of money, thanks to inflation, things are more expensive, but you're not making more. Maybe you're retired, right? You're not making more. So the same dollar is making less and less. Your money is going down, having been told that you are only as valuable as your money. Pretty depressing, right? That's a thought, right? Now, the fact that it's a lie, meaning your value as a human being does not go down because you have no money, and it doesn't go up because you have billions. Your bank account's value goes up and down, right? But nonetheless, if the entire cult has been trained to you to look at disdain, they couldn't pay their bills, what a loser, let's punish them. And then to look at you with great regard, look at this person's bank account, what a great person they are. They have nothing to do with one another, right? A great person is a great bank account. It's absolute stupidity, right? But it makes sense within the cultural framework. So we say that it is a mood disorder, meaning there's nothing wrong with measuring people based on their money. There's something wrong about being depressed, that our human value is supposedly decreasing in an inflationary environment we can't control by the people who promised to take care of us, right? And locked us down and did this and that. This is depressing. But no, that's a disorder. Your feeling is a disorder, right? And so we built into the very framework of the cult a very long list of mechanisms that continue the pretense. And the pretense is that there's nothing wrong with the system, nothing at all. Nothing wrong with the dictionary, nothing wrong with the English language, nothing wrong with the monetary system. If anything is wrong, and there must be something wrong because there's a lot of people in pain. If anyone thinks it's wrong with you. And so your feeling has to be a disorder, and that makes its way into the dictionary. So your disorder, meaning you're disordered. The culture isn't disordered that you're having feelings about. You're disordered. Degrees of sadness, despair, and loneliness. Like, it wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that you're lonely, that you're raised in a cult that does not share deep feelings of any kind on a regular basis. Have anything to do with loneliness? No. It's a disorder. You're feeling loneliness out of order. You should be feeling happy that you have fewer and fewer friends with each generation. But apparently you haven't gotten the news that you should be feeling happy, so you feel miserable. And that is typically accompanied by inactivity, guilt, loss of concentration, social withdrawal, sleep disturbances, and sometimes suicidal tendencies, and sometimes suicide. Then we have, B, a reduction in activity, amount of quality or force, a depression in trade, for example. Then we have 2, biology, a lowering of physical or mental vitality or of functional activity. C, pressing down, lowering. And then economics, period of low economic activity, marked especially by rising levels of unemployment. Well, that would kind of tie in there. So we have economic depression, and then a place or part that is lower than the surrounding area, so a depressed place. Meteorology, in meteorology, a low pressure, so a tropical depression. In astronomy, the angular distance of a celestial object below the horizon. In mathematics, the size of an angle or angle of depression. So we have synonyms, recession and slumps, and antonym boom. So that's referencing, economics. But basically, we're looking at, expansion, depression, or pressurizing and depressurizing a system. And we're using that word as kind of a catch-all for all kinds of states, right? And so we may have less energy for something in particular. We may have less physical energy, or I just don't want to think. I don't want to think. Now, generally speaking, to the degree that we instinctively or voluntarily depress ourselves, because sometimes, just to kind of give an example of one scenario in which depression occurs, sometimes there's an interaction. Let's say you're a 5'6" woman. There's an interaction with a bigger man. And you don't think that something he's saying is right. But he thinks what he's saying is right. You don't think it's right. And so the pressure escalates, right? That's dumb, that's not right, that's right, that's right? And so it's pressure. And then you get a little bit of a shock because the conversation moves from a physical tension or from a mental tension to a physical tension. A bigger body than yours says, "That's it! I've had enough! No more of this! Stop it!" Right? And it suddenly occurs to you that you're with a bigger pattern of energy. And that bigger energy seems pretty upset. There's a lot of energy behind there, right? And they might kill you, or they might hit you, or they might throw you out of the house. So your system about being right and following arguments through rationally has been building the system. You've been pressurizing the system. So this was right, that was right, that was right. So as far as you're concerned, you're going on the right course, right? And you're going to solve this by pointing out, the other person is wrong. But then this pressure valve goes off in them, and there's an awareness, there's a traumatic awareness. Oh, my survival, my security of survival, my sense of love and belonging could all vanish because I'm right, because I'm continuing to pressurize this system that shows that I'm right and he's wrong. Everyone knows it, right? I know it. Any intelligent person would know it, right? If only they knew, right? I'm right, he's wrong, and suddenly you realize the system isn't working because we've got to change the question from who's right and who's wrong, if it's obviously me that's right, who's right and who's wrong, to who's bigger and who's smaller. Like, as we're talking right now, Russia has invaded the Ukraine and has bombed many civilians. And of course, Ukraine is right. We all know Ukraine is right. But what if Russia drops a nuclear bomb? Does that change whether Ukraine is right? You see, the Sudetenlands and areas around Nazi Germany, they were also right. But people didn't want to take on the biggest military energy in the world. And so suddenly, okay, Hitler, you can have these, and you can have those, and you can have these. I know we've promised to protect these people, but we don't want to deal with a very big bully, right? And so this is a form of depression. We're depressurizing our plans to do this. Like, suddenly it doesn't seem like such a good idea. Maybe if I just get really small. So now we have to develop a new identity. We were the identity that was right. I'm right, and you're wrong, and I'm right, and you're wrong, and we can go on all day with that. But then a larger energy than we are. We encounter a larger energy, our parents, the bully, the molestious teacher, the whatever it is, the boss that can ruin our career. We encounter a larger energy. And they see things differently. They want a different outcome. Now, for thousands of years, might has made right. They brought a bigger army, of course they won. And that's the way it should be, right? Might is right. Russia's a bigger country, of course it should take over the Ukraine. Might is right. Right? We don't want to have to get in a nuclear war with them and all that. So just, as long as it's not us, right? So this is a shock, right? This is the warning bell in the biology that says this is not going to end well. But I'm right. See, that's it. The body shuts off the energy. Fuck it. You're too dumb to know what you're dealing with. You're too dumb. You're a dumb member of a fucked up cult that doesn't understand that sometimes being right isn't the salient, it's not the main focus, right? There is rationality. There is the law of mass that says when a small object collides violently with a big object, the small object always loses. That's the law of mass. It's not the law of being right. It's not the law of being intelligent rationally. It's the law of being intelligent in physics, right? That's why we have female Olympics and male Olympics, right? So we haven't figured out that we're in a different domain, right? And so we're in shock that the supposed pattern of doing the right thing for the right reason is failing. It's not only failing, it's endangering my life. And the body gets tired of the stupidity of the entitled mind. That's it. No more energy. Nope. You are going to become meek. You are going to depressurize this system right now, says the body. And suddenly you find yourself, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I'm going to go take a nap, right? Suddenly I'm depressed, right? So why am I depressed? Well, the depression saved your life. The depression saved your marriage. The depression saved the situation, And so to depressurize a system, to knock it out, sometimes is a lifesaver. I mean, imagine a 2-year-old trying to stop the sadistic abuses of a 6-year-old older brother. It's not going to happen. And what if the older brother needs to see submission, feels so powerless that they want to see submission, right? So the anger of the 2-year-old is slowly or suddenly warped into terror about confrontation. And now anytime a bully comes along, you look down and you walk away out of terror. Because depression saved your life. Depressurizing the system saved your life. But nobody made that conscious. Nobody explained any of this. We are a psychologically illiterate cult in which you can go cradle to grave without a single formal hour of emotional literacy based on science. We don't teach it. I've never received, no client, no job, no kindergarten, no middle school, no high school. No government has reached out and said, would you like to become competent in emotions? No. In most cases, the message I've gotten is just don't talk about them. That's a great way to become literate, isn't it? Don't talk about the subject at all. Just remain stupid and don't talk about your stupidity. I mean, what a dumb setup. Well, we're in that setup, right? And so depression is depressurizing a situation, sometimes because we don't know what we're doing. And in this situation, in this kind of situation, where the dogma said carry on, but the body realized your life is in danger and so cuts it off, your mind doesn't get it. So your thoughts still say, come on, let's go. They still kind of peter forward, saying, that's the way. But suddenly we have no energy for it because our body is keeping us alive. Now, the problem with this kind of survival depression is that we didn't understand why our body, we were too dumb to understand why our body did that to save our life. We just look at ourselves and we think that what we needed to do was stand up, right? That's what we have the idea, like that was what I really needed to do. Why did I capitulate? I needed to stand up, right? With no awareness, like, well, maybe I'd have to get my own bank account. Maybe I'd have to get my own money. Maybe I'd have to find another provider for the kids. Maybe I'd have to get another house. Maybe I would have to become more muscular, right? And maybe then continuing and being right would be a good idea. But in this context, without any money, without a job, without a house, with kids that need me and need that house, it is not intelligent to shame an emotionally illiterate man into violence or divorce or just get out, right? That's not intelligent in this situation. You're dealing with the law of mass. You're not dealing with whether you're right or wrong with that particular element, right? But you're too dumb to know that. And your cult is too dumb to teach you that. And your partner is too dumb to do anything different, right? Dumb cultures produce dumb people. We're very, very dumb in some areas, right? It's nothing personal. Right? Dumb people pretend that they're not dumb, right? But look at the evidence. Look at the evidence. It's all around us. Domestic violence, self-mutilation, more suicides than die in traffic accidents, growing homelessness. Intelligent people don't do that, right? And it's not personal, right? Every cult teaches its next generation its memes. And those memes work to a certain extent and don't work to a certain extent. And there are big areas they don't work very well relative to, anything ideal for sure. Doesn't mean they should be given up. It means that we have to grow up and recognize that what we've been taught isn't adequate to live a sustainable, happy life. It's adequate for most people to get a job, but it's not adequate for most people to live a sustainable, happy life. Most people do not live a sustainable, happy life. So, we have to understand the limits of the operating system we're inheriting. So that's a kind of depression that is, quote, good if we want to survive, but we don't understand that it's good. And we don't understand the resolution, right? Because the resolution is not to say, well, that's not fair. It's never going to be fair. The resolution is, am I willing to get a job, get an education, push through the glass ceiling, not have any more kids for now, find another house, and then be right, right? It's not, I'm right, and it's not fair that, I'm in a powerless situation with someone who doesn't know that I'm right, right? So, and the same is true with employees. The employee is often right. But is the employee intelligent and willing enough to start their own company and be right in that company? Or are they just intelligent enough to shame the boss in a shame-based culture by pointing out all the stupidity of the boss, but not starting their own company and using all their brilliance and initiative to do that, right? Of course bosses are stupid. So are you, right? But can you create an alternative? It's like, I don't want to create an alternative, so I've got to shut up, right? And so that's another form of depression. I don't want to get a job. I don't want to form a new company. I just want my boss to get better, right? Well, that's kind of a pressure. It's kind of exhausting. I want this, but I don't want it. And so you've got a tug of war and you've got exhaustion. You've got depression there. So sometimes depression is good, depressing a system for some reasons. It's not ideal, but sometimes we're not smart enough to do something more ideal than depression. So that's why we're depressed. And if we don't understand that, we may be stuck because we may try to exit the depression by continuing the original trajectory. I was just about to tell him a piece of my mind, and then I got exhausted and sidetracked. Now I'm too tired, now I'm anxious, and I'm not telling them. But one day I'm going to tell them, and then I won't be depressed, right? But I'm not going to redo the infrastructure so that I don't then create more problems. Because if I solve the depression and give them all a piece of my mind, and then my entire life falls apart because they didn't like that piece of my mind, well, now I've got a panic, right? Now I've got a new problem, so I'd rather be depressed. So it's important to become competent in this area and to understand that depression is just a function. And sometimes at 2 years old, going docile saved our life. And every time we try to become energized, the body says, no, you're going to get killed. Because nobody's bothered to help us understand our 2-year-old self. Nobody's bothered to help us become traumatically literate. Nobody's bothered to help us heal the PTSD. And our body thinks we're going to die if we express ourselves enthusiastically, and so it's hiding for our own good at 2 years old, without getting the message that now that is being viewed as passivity, a lack of initiative, and we're not getting a raise. And that same habit that once helped us is now hurting us. So this is all in the terrain of understanding depression.